Ladies and gentlemen, could we please rise for the singing of the national and the AU anthems?
Namibia, land of the brave freedom fight, we have won. Glory to their bravery, whose blood waters our freedom. We give our love and loyalty, together in unity, contrasting beautiful Namibia, Namibia, our country, beloved land of savannas, hold high the banner of liberty. Namibia, our country, Namibia, motherland, we love thee. Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Honorable Iipumbu Shiimi, the Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises, Mr. Erwin Shipuka, Standard Bank Namibia Chief Executive, Mr. BC Uirap, President of the Namibia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Madam Charity Muya, Chief Executive Officer of the Namibia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Vetumbwawi Mungunda, Director at the NCCI, Madam Nangula Wanja, Chief Executive Officer and Chairperson at the Namibia Investment, Promotion and Development Board, the NIPDB, Mr. Salamo Hay, Managing Director at High Economic Intelligence, Mr. Idi Itope, Head Domestic Taxes at the Namibia Revenue Agency, Mr. Albi Buota, Chief Executive Officer, Namibia Media Holdings, captains of industry, practitioners of excellence, esteemed members of the media, viewers of NTV, as well as those tuned in on the Standard Bank Namibia and Namibia Media Holdings social media pages. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and a particularly warm welcome to the 2024 Budget Dialogue event. My name is Denver Kisting. It gives me such great delight. It's such an immense pleasure. It's a huge honor to be in your company. It's been about 2 weeks since Minister Shiimi tabled the budget for 2024-2025 in the National Assembly. The understanding is, and the rationale behind us hosting this event a fortnight after the tabling of the budget is that we would have had sufficient time to internalize what's contained in that critically important national document, to reflect on government's priority areas in terms of projected revenue as well as projected expenditure. Because we are captains of industry, because we care deeply about the land of the brave and her people, we certainly also have ideas. So tonight, amongst others, serves the purpose where we listen attentively, we engage, and we certainly will also get the opportunity to ask some questions. Now, we're convening this evening under the theme, A New Dawn, Stimulating Sustainable Local Economic Growth. First things first, I think we need to give credit where it's due. Standard Bank Namibia certainly deserves praise for deciding to host us right on their steps this evening. It's such a beautiful evening, and the stars will join us soon. Let's give them a massive round of applause. Before we have regard to how imminent or otherwise a new dawn is as far as sustainable economic growth is concerned, today signifies certainly a very new dawn for Namibia as far as population growth is concerned, sustainable or otherwise. Honourable Minister, I certainly have at least 3,022,400 questions for the SG. I'm very happy that the SG of the Namibia Statistics Agency is also in the house. And I'm sure Namibians have even more questions. I don't know whether that applause is thanking Namibians for growing the population very steadily, or whether those who did not applaud are expressing concern thereby. Honourable Minister, I have to acknowledge I was concerned about how many of us who posted that figure, that very daunting figure, on our respective WhatsApp statuses, are able to say it. If we were to run a test, how many of the 3 million of us would pass that particular test? Because it could get quite a tongue twister if the zeros and the other figures get so many. But be that as it may, as far as sustainable growth in Namibia is concerned, yes, government certainly has a very serious responsibility to create a conducive environment. But the private sector also has a very important role to play. Every single Namibian, irrespective of what your circumstances are, and we are going to acknowledge that not every single Namibian can tonight say that their circumstances are favorable. But what we need to realize is this is our country, and the well-being of our country, the sustainable economic growth that we are pursuing, is the responsibility of all of us. And therefore, all hands on deck will be required. To help us feel at home and comfortable, I'd like to call the following gentleman to the podium. This Namibian is a chartered accountant and an experienced professional with a history of working in the financial services industry. He's skilled in, amongst others, financial management, external audit, corporate finance, management consulting, and banking, and holds directorships in various Namibian entities. He is a transformational leader with an undisputed passion for talent development, and he holds, as indicated earlier, various directorships in various Namibian entities. Are we able to guess, and we don't have 3 million options, who this Namibian is? Ladies and gentlemen, shall we be so kind and please put our hands together for the Chief Executive of Standard Bank Namibia, Mr. Erwin Shipuka. I was going to deal with the ground rules for this occasion a bit later, but from the onset, it must be made categorically clear. I know some of you may have had a very long Wednesday. I know some of you may have had a very challenging week. We do know that all of us are still recovering from the year called February, but what I shall not tolerate under any circumstances will be a mediocre, a feeble, a weak, and impoverished applause. It's for free. Let's please give the Chief Executive of Standard Bank Namibia a proper round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. Thank you for that introduction. I was told by my table that wasn't me, somebody else. So I almost didn't stand up, so thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises, the Honorable Iipumbu Shiimi, distinguished members of the Namibian business community, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Standard Bank Namibia. This is our home, and so welcome to our home. I'm the head of the household, so I have the privilege to welcome. My team told me that I have to say a few words as the head of the household to earn my salary, so I'm here to do that. Welcome to Standard Bank Namibia for this evening highly anticipated event, the Namibian National Budget Analysis under the theme, A New Dawn, Stimulating Sustainable Local Economic Growth. We are delighted to host this event in collaboration with the Democratic Media Holdings, NMH, and the Namibia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, uniting key stakeholders to delve into the implication and opportunities presented by the budget recently tabled by the Honorable Minister in Parliament. At Standard Bank, we are guided by our profound commitment encapsulated in our purpose. Namibia is our home, we drive her growth. This evening's gathering exemplifies our dedication to ethos as we come together to explore how we can collectively catalyze sustainable economic growth in our beloved nation. As a cornerstone of our Namibian financial landscape, we are deeply invested in nurturing a thriving economic that benefits all Namibians, fosters innovation, and creates opportunity for prosperity. Tonight's discussion and insight will not only dissect the intricacies of the national budget, but also align with our mission to drive Namibia's growth story forward, paving the way for a brighter and more prosperous future for generations to come. We are honored to have the Honorable Minister, Dr. Shiimi, here, who will deliver a keynote address providing valuable perspective on government's strategic vision for economic development. Following that, we will have the distinguished panel of experts that will engage in thought-provoking discussion to unpack and digest the budget, offering insight that will shape our understanding of the opportunities and the challenges ahead. I invite each of you to actively participate, share your perspective, and engage in meaningful dialogues as we embark on this journey towards a new dawn of sustainable economic growth. Together, let us leverage our collective expertise and passion to drive positive change and prosperity in Namibia. Namibia is our home, and we must drive her growth collectively. Thank you for joining us, and welcome.
I think the understanding was that we were all on the same page. Could you please give the head of the household a proper round of applause? We have to echo the sentiments of the house's head that Namibia indeed is our home, and driving her growth collectively is our responsibility. I equally want to concur what the head of the household shared with us. What we are doing in terms of this sustainable economic growth that we are collectively pursuing at the moment is we're thinking of our grandchildren, we're thinking of our great-grandchildren. We cannot afford to be selfish about this lived experience. So the vision is to take good care of them. Let's please give him another round of applause. The next Namibian serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the Namibia Airports Company, a position he's held since May 2019. Does any of us still remember what happened in 2019? It was the year before the onset of the pandemic. It does feel that the last couple of years, Honorable Minister, did something to our individual and collective memory. By a show of hands, who remembers what happened in 2019? I love the honesty, I love the transparency. That's how we accomplish accountability. We're on the same page, don't worry about that. Prior to his tenure at the NAC, he spent 10 years as the Chief Executive Officer of the Namibia Ports Authority, worked in senior and executive management capacities, at MTC as well as Somali Telecoms Group. Prior to that, he worked for the central bank, that is Bank of Namibia. This Namibian holds a master's degree in business administration from the Edinburgh Business School. Do we know who this Namibian is? We've got absolutely no idea who this Namibian is. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like us to put our hands together for the president with a lowercase p, with Mr. Oorap's indulgence. The president of the NCCI, Mr. Bisi Oorap.
Thank you, Denver, for calling me to make a few remarks at this auspicious occasion. I want to recognize our Honorable Minister, Dr. Shiimi, and fellow business partners attending this event. This event is indeed a very important gathering, and we are excited to spend some time to talk about the budget that was recently tabled by the Honorable Minister, a budget that brought a lot of excitement to the people of this country. Together with our partners, it is our honor to host you at this budget dialogue dinner for the fiscal year 24-25. Tonight, we gather under the theme New Dawn, Stimulating Sustainable Local Economic Growth, a theme that resonates deeply with the direction that we envisioned for our beloved nation, Namibia. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all of you for gracing this occasion with your presence here this evening. This is a demonstration of your commitment towards contributing to the prosperity of our country, and that is highly commendable. I would also like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Shiimi, and his team in the ministry for presenting a budget that is viewed as pro-business, at least by ourselves as NCCI leadership. The measures that he announced, particularly tax relief for both individuals and corporates, are indeed a step in the right direction. By increasing the tax exemption threshold for individuals, we alleviate the burden on lower income households amidst the challenges that are posed by the escalating inflation. Furthermore, we are greatly encouraged by the Ministry's commitment to the reduction of corporate tax, as this is a significant move towards making Namibia a more attractive investment destination, fostering competitiveness and growth in our economy. Comrade Minister, we commend you for the consultative approach that you have taken in preparing the budget. It is indeed encouraging that the views and concerns that were raised by the business community and the recommendations that we made as NCCI in consultative sessions are indeed taken care of in this budget and appropriately accommodated. We want to single out one worthy item through our advocacy that has resulted in this tax relief. And these engagements of talking about tax relief started way back in 2019, Denver, long before the onset of COVID-19. So at least that is something that happened around 2019. We want to extend also, and I see a lot of my colleagues with beautiful orange ties, we want to extend our gratitude to our NAMRA colleagues for the remarkable work that they are doing. The significant revenue collection recorded so far is a milestone achievement that is worthy of applause. And I think we should give them a round of applause. We believe that these funds can and will address the government's developmental and social needs. We in the NCCI fraternity are indeed appreciative of NAMRA's ongoing partnership with the Chamber in ensuring tax compliances by businesses and individuals, both big and small. With NAMRA, we have made strides in sensitizing businesses on tax compliance and the importance of meeting obligations through initiatives like the ITAS trainee program. We are pleased to announce that in 2023 alone, we collectively successfully trained 108 SMEs and now look forward to further collaboration this year in that respect. The tax amnesty program, which will run until 30 October this year, has provided much needed relief to businesses by waiving of interest and penalties. We applaud NAMRA for this initiative, which has undoubtedly eased the financial burdens that are faced by many businesses and also by individuals. NCCI reiterates its call on business community to take note that while we reach out to government to be accommodative and to support the revival of growth of businesses, we too, as businesses, must also apply or play our role in ensuring compliance with the tax rules, tax laws, and various regulations. We must be ever mindful of our responsibility as businesses to meet our tax obligations and thereby contribute to the development and sustainability of our nation. So please, as businesses, let us give to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. As for social development, whilst acknowledging the generous allocations to the ministries responsible for education, health, and social needs, much remains to be done. The state of public health facilities, our schools, and other educational institutions should give us all that discomfort that these institutions are not in good space. Therefore, we need to work together as a collective to ensure that we make significant improvement in these social areas. NCCI advocates for the utilization of local capacity in development projects to stimulate money circulation within the economy of our country. We therefore urge our businesses that are given the opportunity to be involved in such projects to be fair and reasonable in their pricing practices as a strategy to be competitive. Additionally, we ask our businesses to also adhere rigidly to ethical practices and professionalism when it comes to executing public sector tenders. It would be remiss of us, or rather of me, to not welcome measures that are put in place by the government to encourage the granting of work skills, gaining and internship opportunities for young Namibians. Obviously, for us, the tax incentive that comes through this initiative is most welcome. But the businesses should look beyond the tax savings by viewing this program as an investment in our nation's young people. It opens a way to expose them to the real world of business and to help them put theory into practice and to give them that necessary experiences. In applauding my first job initiative, which strives to joblessness in our country at no cost to business, we commend the government for conceptualizing and putting this unique program in place. It really needs another applause for the government and the initiative. As NCCI, we now wait in anticipation for the enactment of the Special Economic Zones Bill in the National Assembly during the course of this year. The potential of SEZs in driving economic growth is a no-brainer. It will definitely make significant positive impact in our economy. While we acknowledge that challenges posed by debt obligations remain, the Chamber is encouraged by the government's efforts to source funding domestically, mitigating currency fluctuation risks, and as a strategy to ensure fiscal stability. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the NCCI urges all stakeholders to continue working together towards our shared vision for a prosperous Namibia. Let us seize this opportunity presented by this significant and very important budget to stimulate sustainable economic growth and thereby uplift our nation and our people. Thank you for your presence at this event to all of you. Together, let us embrace this new dawn and build a brighter future for generations to come. Let's have a wonderful evening. I thank you.
Please give President Uirap a proper round of applause. Honourable Minister, in the event that you don't concur, you would need to integrate that in your address or during the panel discussion this evening. But if I listen to President Uirap correctly, he says that the NCCI, under his presidency, was solely responsible for your announcement around tax incentives, around reforms. According to him, it's a public allegation that he made that's been put to the test. They have been advocating for these reforms for over years. So in the event that you don't make mention of that assertion, I'm very tempted to call it an allegation, we will accept it as being the truth. And we do know Mr. President Uirap to be a very truthful man. So kindly bear that in mind, please. We're very happy, and I'm sure you're happy as well, to hear from President Uirap that they regard the 2024-2025 budget as one that's pro-business. We have heard some fair criticism in the past around the approach, so I think that is no small feat in terms of that acknowledgement. We have to concur individually and collectively here and elsewhere with President Uirap that the state that our hospitals and our schools find themselves in is one that should give rise, at the very least, to cognitive dissonance. It's one that should give rise to discomfort. But we should stop shaming, we should stop blame shifting. It's our Namibia, those are our hospitals, those are our schools, and we all have a part to play. As far as house rules are concerned, I won't have a conversation with you again about the applause unless absolutely critical. In the event that nature calls, in the unlikely event that nature calls, please excuse yourself very discreetly and make your way into the bank safely through the entrance on my left, so generally on your right, depending on your seating position. Do so discreetly and then return to your seat as swiftly as possible. We do urge you to please keep noise levels and movement to a minimum during the very short official program. Are we together? Are we together, ladies and gentlemen? Carmen, thank you very much. Are we together? Please give yourselves an absolutely huge round of applause. You look absolutely stunning from this stage. Ladies and gentlemen, this Namibian is an accomplished economist who coincidentally happens to be the Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises in the Republic of Namibia since, I think, Sunday 22 March 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Before his ministerial appointment, he was the governor of the Central Bank, the Bank of Namibia, from 2010 to 2020. Before assuming the role as the head of the Central Bank's household, he was the assistant governor and also occupied a number of positions ranging from junior to very senior levels in the Bank of Namibia. During his working career thus far, he participated in various research projects and co-authored various publications, as well as served on various boards and committees. He holds a Master of Science in Financial Economics. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to please put your hands together for your Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises, Honourable Iipumbu Shiimi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I grow older, I have come to realize that media thrives on conflict. So when they see conflict or potential conflict, they see dollar signs. So that's how they make money. And that's why Denver is trying to, create some conflict between me and the president of NCCI. We are at peace with each other, so Denver, please don't create conflict. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight. I believe a number of you had a chance to listen to my budget presentation when I was presenting in Parliament. Some of you probably have seen the statement, so I will not want to bore you tonight with another statement. So there's in fact one thing that my father told me once, that when people are waiting to eat their supper, don't bore them with boring speeches. Just greet them, sit down. And that's what I'm planning to do. I'm just here to say hello. Are you all well? And then we can have, a nice conversation. We will, around our tables, but we'll also listen to other experts who are going to say something about the budget. But maybe just briefly, the budget for this year has got 3 focus areas. One is investment in human capital, and what we mean by that. So for you to have a thriving economy, you have to have a workforce that is healthy, and therefore we need to direct resources, more resources to our health sector. You need to have a workforce which is educated, so we need to direct resources to the education sector. And you need to have a workforce that is well looked after, especially the vulnerable segment of your society or your population. So one of the priority areas in the budget is really those 3 elements, and that's what we call investment in human capital. It entails those 3 areas: education, health, and social protection. So that takes up about 50 point something percent, 0.2 or something percent of the budget. And that's very critical. We believe that if you really want to have a thriving economy, you have to have a skilled human resources. And those are the elements that make up a skilled human resource. The second part is looking at how do we unlock opportunities in the economy? How do we create a more conducive environment for businesses to thrive? So when you see us directing money to the basic public goods, infrastructure, for instance, when you see us investing in our railway sector, is because it's important to have infrastructure for businesses, for the cost of business to come down. And when the cost of business comes down, it means you become more competitive as an economy. Business people are able to move their goods in a more cost-effective way, and therefore, as an economy, we will be able to compete with the rest of the world. When you see us allocating money to electricity, helping NamPower with some of their production facilities, again, it's an important input into production. If we don't have energy, and I'm happy that the regulator is here of the energy sector. If we don't have energy, we must forget about development. And therefore, it's important that we pay attention to these basics for us to create a conducive environment for the economy to realize its full potential. When you see us investing in water, of course, we can't live without water. But no can business live without water. So water is also a very critical input that we all need for our livelihoods, but also for the livelihoods of the businesses. Again, those are important utilities, or those are important basics that we need to invest in. So that's one element of the budget. The third element of the budget is really looking at the household, you yourself. How do we ensure that we protect their income levels? Because inflation has been eating in the income levels of households for quite a number of years. Inflation has remained elevated, especially since the days of COVID. That disrupted supply chains. As a result, inflation remains elevated, not only in Namibia, but in many parts of the world. In fact, it's a global problem. So as a result, income of households are depressed. Those who were not paying tax before, they have moved into a paying tax category because the thresholds have not been adjusted for quite a while. So that's why you see us adjusting the tax threshold from 50,000 to 100,000. That's why you see us promising to adjust the tax brackets in the coming years. And that's why you also see us saying that, especially for the smaller businesses, we intend to lower the tax level even further, because we believe that SMEs are the heartbeat of the economy, and SMEs will also help us to create entrepreneurship, because no economy can actually thrive without entrepreneurship. And hopefully some of those SMEs will become big businesses, such as this one where we are today. I believe even Standard Bank started as a small bank, and now it's a big corporate. So it's important that we, first of all, we support the households, but we also need to support the small entrepreneurs for them to be able to create 3 jobs, and that will make a big difference. So those are the focus area of the budget. Now, development, as I have learned, it's a partnership, and I think somebody said it here before. Development is a partnership between the private sector and government. Government can only do so much to try and create a conducive environment for private sector to thrive. But we can only make a significant leap forward as a country if we can all work together. What I have seen, there is still suspicion between private sector and government. Those who are in the private sector think that we are just a bunch of useless people, don't work very hard. I'm sure Menangula will tell you that we also work hard there. In fact, since I joined government, I now work on Saturdays and Sundays. I never worked like that before. So we also try there. And government believe that, some of us who are in government probably believe that, the private sector is just there, to hide their income, not to pay tax. They are just there to, to make lots and lots of profit at the expense of their workers. So I think we need to bridge that gap, and the president of the NCCI and his team are here. They must help us to bridge that gap between the private sector and government, because development is a partnership. And we need to strengthen this partnership for us to grow. We also not only expect a good working relationship between government and the private sector, but I also want to see a private sector that is united, a private sector which is not fragmented, because if the private sector is united, it is able to speak with one voice. And it's also easy to engage the private sector, because at the moment I believe our private sector is fragmented. So there's a small group here, there's another group here, and they all want to engage you. And unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of time to be able to engage all the small groups. So my plea to the private sector is we need to find a working formula that will bring all the private sector entities together so that you speak with one voice. Once you speak with one voice, we will be able to listen to you, because now, you become a powerful voice. And when you have a powerful voice, people listen to you. But when you are fragmented, people will ignore you because they think that you are just an irritation. You're just a bunch of people who are divided. They can't even work together. So my plea to you is that let's find that working formula to be able to work together. We also need to identify opportunities together as government and private sector, and look at specific sectors. Say, in this sector, these are the constraints, the binding constraints that are preventing us from exploiting the opportunities in those sectors. Sit around the same table to understand how do we do away with those binding constraints that are preventing, growth to take opportunities of those opportunities in those sectors. Again, that will only come once we have a conversation, and it's not going to come with only one conversation or one day conversation. It should be a continuous conversation. So that's why we all need to be organized. Government needs to be organized. Private sector needs to be organized so that we can take this country forward. Denver said we must not think about ourselves, but we must think about the future generation. We must think about our children. Are we going to create job opportunities for them? When our grandchildren are coming from schools or graduating from universities, will they find economic opportunities, job opportunities for them to be able to thrive? So I think that's something that needs to preoccupy all of us. So I will be committing a cardinal sin to continue with a speech. So remember what my father said: do not bore people. So enjoy your evening. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Please give your Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises another round of applause. In the event that you were wondering for the past 2-3 years why you have not been able to secure an appointment with the Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises, you've asked your personal assistant several times to draft an email, you've checked that email, you've in the meantime located the WhatsApp number of the Honorable Minister, you've saved it, you've engaged him on that platform, he blue ticks you, there's no response. Tonight, we are held responsible. And it's a dual responsibility to hold one another accountable. The Minister says, without unity, constructive dialogue is not possible. Yes, it's everyone's responsibility to build the economy of the country. Yes, we have to engage. Yes, government isn't perfect, but we need to do so as a united front from the perspective of the private sector to see to it that we speak with one voice, and therein lies the power. Please give him another round of applause. I'd like to ask the tech team to please be on standby with the microphones as we call the guests to the front who will be panelists of this evening's discussion, my absolute favorite part of the event. The way it will work, so we have about 40 minutes maximum for an engagement between me and them, and then we will open the floor for 15 minutes, 20 if we can push it very gently, so that you ask your questions. There will be a couple of microphones in your vicinity. Please indicate when you'd like to ask a question, and once you are given the opportunity, tell us who you are. Please tell us in what capacity you're asking that question, and please direct that question to one panelist. Kindly do not share an elaborate overview of what happened in the National Assembly 2 weeks ago. this evening. We don't have time, unfortunately, for that. And if a question has already been dealt with, let's not ask the question again. Let's please ask one question per human being. Is that okay? Are we able to give ourselves a massive round of applause, please? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call to the stage Mr. Vetu Mungunda, NCCI Director, who is a reputable and experienced entrepreneur, professional and business executive with a high level of strategic, financial, governance and business expertise. Apart from being the NCCI Director, he is also the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Ombu Capital Pty Limited. Mr. Mungunda is also a former head of this very household. Can we please give him a massive round of applause? The next Namibian is a chartered accountant by profession. The Namibian is the Chief Executive Officer and Chairperson of the Namibia Investment, Promotion and Development Board. The NIPDB, a public entity in the presidency, is tasked with the mandate of promotion as well as facilitating foreign and domestic investments and the promotion and development of MSMEs. Until December 2020, this Namibian served as partner at PwC Namibia with more than 2 decades of experience in auditing and has served as lead partner in audits of organizations across various sectors and industries. Besides playing a role on the accounting auditing professional bodies, such as the Institute of Chartered Accountants and the Public Accountants and Auditors Board, she also served as a member of the Tax Court Appeal. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Madam Nangula Wanja. We did learn today, Madam Wanja, that there are more men than women in this country. I hope what we're witnessing this evening is not that women are underrepresented at the occasion. Ladies, please give your fellow lady a massive round of applause. Let us not become problematic. This Namibian is also very tall, but he's an experienced managing director, globally exposed, and also operated in neighboring South Africa for a total of 4 years, with a demonstrated history of working in the research industry with a strong focus on economics and investments. This particular Namibian is highly skilled in capital markets, fundraising, local government, project finance, real sector economy, as well as data analysis. His professional experience spans over 15 years, of which 8 years have been at executive level. Ladies and gentlemen, could we please be so kind and put our hands together for Mr. Salomo Hay, MD, High Economic Intelligence. I'm sure Mr. Hay is unhappy with that applause. Please give him a proper round of applause. Last but certainly not least, this Namibian is head of domestic taxes at the Namibia Revenue Agency, who brings experience from previous roles, also at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mr. Itope holds a Master of Business Administration MBA from the prestigious University of Stellenbosch, with a robust skill set from customer service, strategy, training, management, and lots more. He contributes valuable insights to the industry and to this country. Would we please be so kind and put our hands together for the head of domestic taxes at the Namibia Revenue Agency, Mr. Idi Itope. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all got a bottle of water. It's going to get relatively hot in here. And we certainly do not want you to dehydrate during the occasion. All right. As we get into it, I need to appeal to all of us to please keep it brief and to the point. If I say thank you, that means that we've run out of time. The precious resource of time is unfortunately a finite one. I'd like to start with the Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises. Minister, having heard your takeaway from your own budget speech from a fortnight ago, could you say it with true conviction that the national budget from a fortnight ago signals a new dawn by stimulating domestic economic growth sufficiently? Is it your conviction that that policy document that you tabled in Parliament 2 weeks ago sufficiently stimulates domestic growth and thereby signaling a new dawn for this country?
Thank you. I was just checking whether the technology is working. Sorry, Denver. I don't think I can be the judge and the referee at the same time. So I'm not sure that the question is fair. But be that as it may, when I was making a brief remark, I was talking about the focus of the budget, and one of the things, or one of the goals of the budget is really to try and unlock economic opportunities. So we talked about investment infrastructure, but what I have also not emphasized, because it was already emphasized by Mr. Oirap, is the tax environment that we are trying to make more and more conducive by making Namibia more tax competitive, especially as compared to our peers. And the idea behind that is really to try and create economic incentives for the businesses or the business sector to thrive. So whether that is enough, of course, we will never be able to, to stimulate the economy with only the budget. So there are some other things that you need to do that do not need money, or if they need money, it's probably not directly from the budget. So there, it's a combination of tools that you have to employ. So it's not only the budget, but I think as far as the budget is concerned, the aim is really to try and create that conducive environment for the business sector to thrive, and thereby, or through that, creating employment opportunities especially for our youth.
Before we proceed, Mr. Minister, our wage bill is seen to overwhelm any ambition for development, whilst we continue resorting to borrowing expensive debt. Now, I know you referred to the first question as unfair, so I don't know what you're going to call this one, but do you concur with this stance?
Well, I think over time and over again, we have been raising concerns about the level of our wage bill, that is taking up a significant part of revenue. That's not a secret. I think we all acknowledge that. The question is, what are we doing about it? So what government has been trying to do over the last few years, you could probably see that the number of public servants has come down. Maybe not by a big margin. It's now hovering on about 100,000 people. It used to be about 16,000, 17,000 people. So why? Because when people were leaving, were retiring, some were joining the private sector, government was not hiring aggressively as before. And therefore, through what is called natural attrition, the number has come down.
Sorry for the interruption, Honourable Minister. Just repeat the figure for us, what it used to be and where we're at now.
So I will not be able to have the exact figures, but I think this is more or less the rough estimation, that it's hovering on about 100,000.
At present?
At present. But of course, that is subject to change as we recruit more aggressively. that number could also increase. But the point I'm trying to make is that it has come down from where it used to be. So, yeah, close to 117,000, 116,000. So that's where it used to be, probably about 7 years ago. So through natural attrition, that has come down. So is that enough? So no, we still have to find a winning formula to try and reduce that number. And also the fact that it was taking up a lot of, a significant part of our revenue. That has also come down a bit, because it used to stand at about 55% of revenue. But it has now come down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Mungunda, is it your conviction, is it your observation from the document tabled by the Minister 2 weeks ago that it reflects the importance of the private sector and business, particularly SMEs, and the role that these play to contribute to national development?
Yeah. No, thanks for the opportunity to be in the open African skies and have a conversation or a dialogue, if we've termed it. So I think I remember a few years back, the theme of one of the previous budgets was private sector-led inclusive growth. I can't remember which year it was. And if one looks at this particular budget, so it's actually a very, very positive budget. I think there has been compliments given to NAMRA. I really want to add to my president to say we must give credit to NAMRA. It has been a huge success. To have growth of revenue of close to 25% in 1 year is a huge, huge milestone for this country. But it is also my underlying belief that this country actually never really had a revenue collection problem. It actually always had an expenditure problem, a spending problem. So we continue to do well in collecting revenue, but I think when it comes to spending, the spending continues to be into welfare, as the minister said, that a lot of the spending goes into the social welfare clusters of our country. And in terms of the private sector, we're not really seeing much in terms of that private sector led. And what we mean with that, you need to look at sectors that really support economic activities. Look at sectors that support the growth of new sectors, new industries, and new value chains. We're not seeing that. Obviously, there has been growth in some of the economic sectors like trade and industry, but it is at a very, very low as a percentage of the allocation. Agriculture is only at about 3 or 4% of the allocation. It should actually be at about 10%. So we still have a long way to go. So that's one. The second, I think, is also when we look at where the economic growth has been coming, we understand the growth was like over 5% in 2023. But you don't actually feel that in the economy, and that is because that growth has come from sectors that are not localized. Mining is not localized. Mining contributes only 3% to employment creation. So it doesn't have real linkages into the livelihoods. The sectors that have real linkages into the livelihoods of our country in terms of SMEs, small enterprises, small businesses are not growing. And that's
What do you attribute that to?
And I think we've got structural issues, and I would like to see, I think, using budgets that we start to deal with those structural issues. And it has to do with how we allocate our budget. I know that it is probably a long play. I think my honorable minister will probably say that, because we need to start to reduce spending on defense, okay, and spend more on agriculture. But how do you do that in the short term, for example? We need to also bring in this private sector-led growth in real practical application. That means that there has to be more public-private partnerships. There has to be more incentives for private sector businesses. There has to be more funding going into small enterprises,
Thank you.
real small enterprises.
Thank you very much. Madam Wanja, it's clear, and those figures are already in the public domain, that you and your team's relentless efforts are slowly but very steadily starting to show that there's an increase in foreign direct investments. As part of the responsibility that you have in assisting government to create a conducive environment for both existing but also prospective investors, is it your observation that the budget reflects that responsibility we do have to create a more enabling environment, specifically if one has regard to incentives for these investors and or prospective investors?
Hello. Thank you very much for the question, and I think maybe 3 main points. Number one, I think His Excellency, the late Dr. Hagege Ngob, may his soul rest in peace, has promised us that this year is the year of expectation. And when he went in office in 2015, he promised Namibian people prosperity, and of course, we have seen that it has been quite a dry period for many, many years. But towards the end of last year, he made announcement that the economy is turning around. And we throw around figures of saying, yes, the foreign direct investment is coming, the GDP growth is high. I think in 2022, we ended up having at 6.5%. And I think they're saying that last year will probably end up still in the higher of 4%. And the question that you always get is that, okay, so what? FDI is here, GDP is here, what does it mean for me? I think hopefully this budget has to some extent delivered by saying, okay, what it means is the economic activities have increased, and therefore it starts with me hopefully in March getting $20 more than I got in February, Honorable Minister. So this budget delivered almost for everybody, MSMEs, investors, a private person, and so on. I think that is the first point. The second point, the function that we are government employees that are trying to please the private sector so they can invest. It's an interesting job, but it's also a balancing job. So what you need to do is you need to understand where government is coming from and the fact that they need to collect revenue, but also where the private sector is coming from. So looking at that message and whether it is now working with NCCI, we are very excited and pleased to note the announcement with the various initiatives. And I will look at 1 or 2, 3 that we saw as beneficial. But we also saw the balance on saying the budget cannot be relied on 10 companies that are paying while others are carrying losses for the last 100 years. So how do we bring about balance? Because if we must finance the tax for the companies that are going to, we are going to reduce a rate, somebody else need to bring something in there. And I think that is the balancing act that the ministry is playing. And I think that is the role, working with investors, of course, understanding that point, but also listening to what government needs. And from that perspective, we are seeing that there is a good balance, which means that the people that are paying tax are excited about this budget. The ones that are not paying tax are not necessarily excited. But then, of course, somebody, if one arm is getting, another one need to give. So for the ones investors, what are investors looking for? Number one, investors are looking for skills. Does this budget speak to skill? Yes. Whether it is investment in the education sector, whether it is my first job. Investors are looking for infrastructure. What, does this budget talk to infrastructure? Yes. So if you look
May I interrupt you on that point?
Yes.
And I'll also get back to the minister regarding that. Some observers have expressed concern about the rate at which we execute capital projects.
Yes.
So it's one thing to, in the main budget at the start of the year, budget for capital expenditure. It's something else to, during the course of the year, actually execute. And when the midterm budget is tabled later during the year, one often sees downward revision of that.
Yes. So before I answer that, so my last point then of course, was on the rates themselves for manufacturing and new sectors that we want to develop, that we do not have in the market, that we are promoting, for sectors that we believe will bring about high employment. So if you look at the special economic zone rate, it's really looking at which new sectors that will employ more people do we need, whether they're in manufacturing, whether they are in services, whether they are in agro-processing. Those are sectors that we need to start attracting. They will create more jobs, but we will not be able to attract those investors without the adjustment in rate. And looking at that, and looking at also the policy for special economic zone that we see coming, we expect that we will get better outcomes there. So for me, that balance in the budget was good. So looking at execution, of course, that is a challenge, but the minister has spoken about something, and it relates to a point that we are working together as government and the private sector, increasing public-private dialogue, and one of those items is really to discuss something we call productivity. So we have got productivity task forces, and that productivity task forces is looking at the fact of saying, if we have got high-value fruit, we have got beef value chain, we've got the film industry, and now on Friday we are looking at electricity, and I think in June we are talking about automotive component. Those are the sectors that we are starting, and we're saying, if we want to increase productivity in those sectors, what do we need to do? So we bring the players together and have a conversation. And those conversations are talking about those bottlenecks, those constraints, and the delay in implementation.
Thank you.
And the cabinet is holding the ministries accountable to deliver on the promises made. And I think we are seeing many entities in the public sector that are responding to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hay, this evening our focus area revolves around a new dawn, stimulating sustainable local economic growth. With your often sober look at national documents, particularly the budget that you're very passionate about, against the backdrop of our focus for this evening, what is your very brief snapshot overview? Those are three terms meaning the same thing, and I'm very happy that Madam Ngulawanja is in our midst this evening. She has publicly called me out for being a draconian timekeeper. I wear that title with absolute pride.
Yeah, thank you, Denver. I think if you would allow me, you did ask a question initially about what happened in 2019, and as part of the theme for tonight, which speaks to the new dawn. I think in 2019 we saw. I mean, Alex is here. We have not actually looked at the numbers to that extent in terms of the population numbers. But what we do know, what happened in 2019, is that we were locked inside.
The beginning of 2020, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then those numbers grew up. And what we have seen is a huge number.
What I'm hearing Mr. Hayes say is the figures that were announced today are in fact factually correct on account of what happened in 2020. But be that as that may.
So as part of the new dawn, that's very much in line, and I think it's important that we do say something about the census. Now, coming back to your question, I think this is one of the better budgets we have ever had. I think Honorable Tate Shiimi has done very well in terms of really, one, the pillars that he has put forward in terms of increased domestic demand, infrastructure gap, and then trying to make sure that we move towards fiscal prudency. And he has outlined in terms of what exactly does that mean in terms of those particular pillars that he had outlined. And I mean, there's some welcome relief in terms of, for instance, if you look at Q3, which is essentially the latest number we have on GDP for last year, on 10 months on committed capital projects is not very good at all. So there is a concern in that respect. We have seen that special economic zones are back, right? Maybe Helvi and the minister in due course will tell us in terms of how is that different from the EPZ that has now sort of fallen away, if it were.
Was that a surprise development for you to see that they're back?
Well, not surprising in the sense that we're moving it away and we're bringing something new, but more to say, why did we take it and why are we bringing this? But again, like I said, the devil is in the detail. Again, one would have wanted to see some policy certainty, right, in relation to when does Memenangula's bill get enacted? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that that investment and promotion bill, which will bring about the certainty, will give the necessary confidence to the investors. Because at the end of the day, what you don't want is you don't want to have investors mid-air. Are they lending or are they taking off? So if you have that sort of policy, that act or that bill enacted, what that would mean is that investors would know whether we are going right or whether we are going left.
Just very briefly, Mr. You also expressed concern about execution. What do you make of, I think you referred to it as less than satisfactory execution rates. What do you attribute that to, very briefly, please?
Yeah, so there could be a combination of factors that can lead to that. One is the procurement system, right? To the extent that what we have seen in the past couple of years is projects goes to the CPB, the projects then goes to review panels, and that process drags out for quite a considerable period of time before an award takes place, and subsequently at times then the projects never then get executed. So those are some of the concerns, but then you took my train of thought away. So coming back to one of the other budget issues that we'd want to see some clarity on is, for instance, the legacy issues that the minister spoke about, where he said that, look, we all now starting on a clean slate. What are the applications for the clean slate for these entities? Because remember that you don't, the non-compliance of tax revenue does not happen with one non-payment. It's a process. So we want to know how will those entities be held accountable going forward to make sure.
Thank
and then
you.
Another beautiful thing that came out of this is really the internship program. That will go a long way in bridging the gap between what we now are seeing to become the unemployment problem around graduate unemployment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hay. Mr. Itope, there's resounding consensus about the great work that NAMRA continues to do. But what we have to be cognizant of as far as a budget is concerned, we're working with projections. So it's the projected revenue and it's the projected expenditure. And NAMRA needs to do the things that need doing as far as the projected revenue is concerned, so that it is collected and becomes actual revenue. How do you intend to strengthen your mandate even further to see to it that we collect everything that's due to NAMRA?
Thank you, Denver, and good evening. First, I would like to thank Mr. Shiimi for tabling such a magnificent budget for this year. Now, as a reward from him when we have done well, he has always asked us to collect more. And that's, hence you see the projection for this budget. As I walked in today, Salomo here asked me what the secret was in terms of getting the money in. And truly there are just three things. One is education. Just letting all the taxpayers know about their obligations, what to do, when to submit, how much to pay. That's the first part. The second one is the service delivery, which is really the convenience. Where should I go? What system should I use? When is it available? When is it convenient? And we have provided this platform so that anybody can transact at a time of their choice. And then, of course, there's the third one. When everything fails, when you're being educated, when you know what to do, but you don't do it, then we enforce the law. That enforcement is then that action that most of the taxpayers don't like going through, but it's necessary to get the money in, because you cannot have on one hand compliant taxpayers who are paying what is due, and then on the other hand, you have got those who ignore the law and then become delinquent in the process. Thank you.
Are you telling us that the orange signifies fire? Before I give the Minister a very brief opportunity for a short rebuttal on the issues raised, I would like you to please get ready if you want to ask a question. Please keep it brief, to the point, always respectful. Tell us who you are and what capacity you're asking that question, and direct it to a panelist. So whilst we wait for you, I'm just going to give the Minister an opportunity for a brief rebuttal for the issues raised. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Denver. So maybe just a brief clarification on some of the questions that we asked. One, I think Salome was asking, what's the difference between the EPZ and the Special Economic Zone? The major difference is really tax. EPZs, when you were operating in that zone, you were not paying any tax at all, and that was indefinite. So in other words, you had an indefinite tax holiday. And as you know, that policy, in fact, landed us in hot water with the EU. We were listed as an entity that is practicing harmful taxes or promoting harmful taxes. So that is not going to change. So if you are going to operate, if a business is licensed to operate in the special economic zone, it's going to pay tax, but it's going to pay a low tax. That's why we have announced in the budget statement that those who are going to, once the law is in place and the regime is in place, those who are going to operate in that space will pay a tax of 20%, which is different from what other companies are going to pay. We said, we have announced that we are slowly moving to 28. So the others will be at 28. In the special economic zone, you'll be at
Minister,
20.
My sincere apologies. I just need to appeal to you just to keep it brief.
Very good.
We want the NTV viewers to stay with us for as long as possible, but unfortunately a new program will have to start very soon.
Very good. Very good. So I think that's more or less what I wanted to clarify. I think that the rest were comments that we are taking into account, and very useful comments.
Perhaps, if I may, also from Mr. Hayes Chambers, a bill that he called Memenangula's bill. That's, of course, not what the name of the bill is, but he wanted to know when this bill will be enacted so that it becomes a statute, so that investors and prospective investors in particular can have more policy certainty. Where are we at, very briefly?
I believe Menangula should actually answer that question, because it's called Menangula's bill.
Not without reason.
Well, I believe the minister is making significant progress in terms of incorporating all the comments that have been provided by all the stakeholders. I believe the bill is now sitting with the legal drafters to finalize the drafting part. So once that has happened, so we are still hoping that the minister, when I'm talking about the minister, that's the minister responsible for trade and industrialization. The minister will table that bill in the next financial year. That's the hope. Which means before March, the 31st of March next year.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the floor? We have one here in front. We need a microphone, please. Please tell us who you are and what capacity you're asking the question, and direct the question to a specific panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, Denver. My name is Stefan Hugo. I'll just ask my question as a Namibian. So I spoke to some of my friends in the banking industry, and they're very excited about the US dollars that are coming into the country for oil and gas exploration. So I would like to ask Tati Shiimi, do you believe as a country we are ready for the growth that's coming, and to make sure that the benefit of oil and gas exploration will trickle down to the Namibians that need it?
Thank you so much, Mr. Hugo. Shall we take a few more questions from the floor, unless you prefer to go for it right away, Honourable Minister? All right.
Evening, everyone. Tim Stula from Standard Bank. So I think this question is more to Salomo and Menangula. around FDI.
Kindly limit it to one panelist, please.
Okay, let me give it to Salomo. So it's actually a very easy question. I want to ask around what is FDI? Because we've seen, I think in the past in the past 3 years, FDI's contribution of oil and gas sectors went up from about less than 1% to 15% in 2023. But what I wanted to ask is that we've seen that most of these payments and flow of funds are settled offshore. So could it be that our FDI number is actually understated?
Thank you. Thank you so much. One very last question for now. Are we good to go? We've got one down there. No one shall be left out. Everyone is included.
Good evening. My name is Yambomwine Nehemia, here on behalf of Namibia Asset Management. And my question is directed to our Honorable Minister, Tate Shiimi. Remarks were made during the panel discussion that people paying tax have something to be excited about from the budget speech. So this implies that people not paying tax don't have much to be excited about. And I would say that majority of our unemployed youth fall into this category. Considering that we have a youth unemployment rate of almost 50%, what do my fellow young people have to look forward to from this budget speech, in addition to the internship program? What else is there for them?
Thank you so much. I think that's it for now. You may start, Honorable Minister.
Should I start?
Yes, please.
Very good. Thank you. Well, Stefan, are we ready for this new industry? I believe we're not ready as a country, and I think we must look at it from different perspectives. One, for us to be able to reap the benefits, the full benefits of this new industry, the oil industry, we must have the skilled human resources that are going to work in those industries. So we probably have some. This is an industry that was not here before, and therefore we don't really have many of them with that experience. So we need to develop them. So those that are in the oil sector, they need to really to retool and sharpen their tools so that they can take advantage of this. But more importantly, our higher learning institution must also start to focus on the kind of skills that are required in these industries, so that we can develop these human resources, and some of them will probably graduate and become, business owners on their own to supply services to the oil industry. So skills development, I think, becomes very, very, very critical. But also at the level of businesses, I think as Namibian businesses, we need to start thinking about what service can I supply to this industry. Last time I was checking the statistics in the oil sector as a whole, probably about 60–70% of the people who are employed in the oil industry are not employed by oil companies. They are not at the rigs, producing oil. No, they are employed by service providers. So the question to businesses and NCCI is what sort of services does this industry need? And how do we supply these services to this industry? I think that's a question that our business need to answer so that we can start to ready ourselves for this new sector. And of course, from our side, as government, how do we ensure that we harvest the necessary tax resources that we need to harvest so that we can also, redistribute those benefits that all Namibians are supposed to benefit from. So we're looking at our tax law to see whether it's competitive enough. It's a law that came into being in the early 90s.
Thank you,
so
sir.
It needs to be refreshed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there was a question of on youth. I think, when I said the investment in human capital, that is investment in youth. But more specifically, there are specific youth programs that are being funded. Apart from the internship, we are funding the youth credit scheme. We are funding the equipment aid scheme. We are funding the charcoal project, We are increasing the intake in the National Youth Services. All those are programs that are being funded. So that's why when you look at the Ministry of Youth budget, it has actually increased by about 47 or 45%, simply because we believe that yes, we need to support the youth. They are not having an easy time, so we need to try and help them to try and find a soft landing in life. So if you read the budget statement, I think there are specific information about what youth programs are we funding, but in the main, those are some of the ones that are being supported to try and create opportunities for the youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Madam Nangula, would you like to perhaps say something about FDI, although the question was specifically directed at Mr. Hay? Are we understating the FDI in this new emerging sector?
Maybe let us wait for the owner of the question to answer, and then I will see how I can supplement.
Owner?
Thank you for expropriating the question to the owner. Yeah, I think FDI in its very nature is a very complex exercise, and as more so in the mining sector, which essentially is the oil and gas. Remember, there was a time that there was exploration activity by a company called HRT, right? They found non-commercial oil. But in our books as a country, it was recorded as FDI, right? Because of the activity that took place there. This goes to the point of both the budget statement and what Mr. Mungunda alluded to when he said that it's a capital-intensive sector to the extent that it doesn't necessarily have the transformative nature of, say, a job, immediate value add to the economy. However, that can be created. It can be created through policy imperative. So whether I wouldn't want to dwell or to delve into whether it's over and understated. I think the guys from transfer pricing, who are much smarter in making sure that the settlements accrue to the correct country, will speak to that. But the nature of the FDI is that if you've got policy certainty around what is it that Namibians stand to benefit within the local content in relation to the oil and gas, the issues around settlement, the issues around what must be settled here, the issues around which sector is solely for Namibians, for local content, the policy will be able to define that. And that's why it's so important for us to make sure that our policies are defined to the extent that even in countries where there's war, people know there's war. When they go into a country where there's war, they know that they have to shoot to get whatever minerals. So if you don't want to shoot, you don't go into that country. So the point I'm making is that if the local content is getting 30% of this, the policy must be that clear so that there's no gray areas. And through that, the issues are around how does FDI accrue to the country will be settled through that.
Thank you. We have to bear in mind that the chairperson of the Namibia Statistics Agency has been at it since early this morning. So we also have to cut him some slack because his analogies are getting very dangerous at this hour, Madam Nangula.
So thank you. Maybe just two things, of course, on the FDI. And many times, I'm sure that some of the figures that are reported do not necessarily flow into the country. It's transactions about Namibia that do not necessarily result in cash outflow. But another figure that is good to look at is what they call the private account activities, because I think that's why many times people say, when you look at investment, we are just focused on foreigners because we talk about FDI, but what about local private investment? And one thing that we are measuring is the private account activities, and that is also an activity that is looking quite good. Now, coming to this point, which actually is what I wanted to touch, and it also looked at the oil question. Are we ready? And many times, as whether it is businesses or it is individuals, whether we are ready, we always want to put that burden on government. And it's a burden that we must equally share between the government and the local businesses. Now, when I sit and I'm promoting investment, Of course, we say policy is important, local content is important, but the two, sometimes they are in conflict. So if you overextend on local content, you can slow down the investment. So how do we balance? And also, normally, I do not necessarily believe that business will employ foreigners if there is sufficient skills locally to render that service, unless that skill is not there. So what are we doing as institutions of higher learning and as Namibian business community to build the skills, because we need those people with experience? That is the first question. The second question is, what are we doing to make ourselves ready? Like the Honorable Minister says, that when that industry comes, it's not about having all the engineers and the welders, it's about the people that are providing services. And therefore, yes, the local content policy is important to some extent. But if we put conditions to foreign companies that are investing, when we are not ready to help them meet those conditions because we don't have the local companies to offer their services and we don't have the local skills to provide that, then we don't need the local content. So the local content policy must be met with the skills and the know-how and everything else and the capital that we need to invest.
Thank
and I
you.
think that is important.
Thank you so much. Mr. Tope, as we're starting to wrap up our conversation in the interest of the precious resource of time that unfortunately is finite, there are some economists, particularly those seized with research, follow my eyes, don't look now, who have expressed concern that yes, confidentiality is a matter that needs to be maintained, but who want to see, especially if we're serious about guarding against tax evasion, that more transparency is required around corporate tax contributions. And I think it's also a matter that Mr. Mungunda addressed indirectly earlier. Are we seeing that the sectors driving the economy are also the biggest contributors towards corporate tax revenue? Those sectors that we say are the ones driving this economy of ours, can we honestly say that they are also the biggest contributors to corporate tax revenue?
Thanks, Denver. Here's one thing about various sectors of the economy. First thing, see, your tax policy, your strong tax policy fortifies the tax administration. Now, in this budget speech, we've just learned that there will be an amendment in terms of assessed losses. Now, you could have industries that are doing extremely well, but because they were ramping up their operations, they incurred losses and they continue to carry forward those losses. Their revenue does not then translate into tax revenue. So that's one possibility. But of course, when you talk about industries, you don't hide behind confidentiality. Why? Because you're talking about a sector in general. You have sectors that are well organized. The Mining Chamber of Commerce, for instance, when it comes to data, it's so data-driven that you get almost to know which mining entity is trading, which one is not trading, where are they, and so forth. So it's not that straightforward in terms of looking at the contribution by various sectors in terms of either job creation or investment in capital or other variables, and deduce from there that from this industry, you're going to derive sufficient or more taxes as per that performance. But we have also in the past spoken out against sectors that we believe were not contributing sufficiently or were not contributing in accordance to what they've earned. And that is not confidential, and we do not hide behind the clause for that purpose.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mungunda, what's your take on that? Having heard Mr. Topa say that policy fortifies the administration.
No, I think that's quite a good analogy, but I would like to extend that to 2 points that have been also discussed. The one is, I think the question of local content, whether whatever we call it, whether you call it local content, transformation, whatever, that's an element in the room, in the house, in our house. And it is an element that needs to be dealt with from a business perspective as a matter of agency. It has been postponed for long, and there are two aspects of policies or legislation where that has to be addressed. The one is the Investment Promotion Act, because it has specific regulation or clauses that deals with protection of locals with respect to or reserving certain sectors for locals. So it is critical that we get that legislation in. The second part is the question of local content, but not necessarily at an industry level. We need to deal with this at a national level, and we need to have a national framework that can be then customized for oil and gas, for mining, for all the other sectors. But we now have jumped to trying to do something for oil and gas. But we have had mining, and we don't have a national framework. And as a result, we have the second most unequal society in the world because we have not really dealt with local content and transformation. And I think from a business perspective, these are issues that are important, especially for small businesses. Because if you look at the value chains in all of these sectors, you look at construction, where did the big tenders go? They went to foreign companies. It will continue until we come to dealing with
Just a
that.
follow-up in that regard, Mr. Mungunda. What do you make of Madam Wanja's concern that we can legislate and we can regulate local content or whatever it is that we want to call it, but in the event that we simply do not have that specific skill at a given time, what purpose does it serve to legislate it when we are dealing with quite a serious skills gap?
Yeah. Now, I would like to actually disagree with my learned colleague here. And the point is this. I think the question, and I agree that it is a responsibility of both the private sector and business, as well as government. But I think, especially for smaller businesses, government has a greater responsibility to have policy certainty around this issue, but also the instruments to support the development of those skills. And that's something that we need to start. We didn't do it with mining, we didn't do it with fishing, we didn't do it with any of the sectors that consumes a lot of our resources. We're now starting to talk about oil and gas, and we have not been ready for 30 years, and we're not going to be ready for the next 30 years.
Thank you.
Until we get there.
Thank you. There seems to be some unrest at this table in front. Is there a question? Can we bring a microphone to this table? We'll allow for them, because this needs to be a collective discourse. We can't be having individual discourse this evening in the interest of Namibia and the well-being of the people. There, perhaps, next to Mr. Nakatana. What was the origin of the discourse? Very well. Do we still have one or maximum two questions from the floor in the spirit of generosity?
Let me just redeem myself before the question comes.
Absolutely.
I don't want to disagree where there is no disagreement. I see the media starting to interfere here.
Yeah.
Because I think we need to be clear. I don't think we differ. I don't have a challenge with local content policy. I think it is necessary. However, if it is not accompanied by a deliberate effort to build the skills and the businesses to meet that policy, then you should not make the policy. So I think we agree that yes, it has to be there, but it must work in conjunction. Now, that responsibility rests not only with government, but with both government and the private sector. Unfortunately, what I am seeing is many times the private sector is lagging behind in preparing themselves to take up the opportunity. And I'm telling you, for example, an example of green hydrogen. The private sector in Namibia is quiet. We started a private sector green hydrogen task force, and it stood for 3 days, and we are not seeing many people taking up the activity that is required. So we can have the conversation longer outside later, but the point is, as private sector and as Namibian citizens that want to benefit from our resources, we need to make sure that we do something to grow our skills, to grow our know-how, and to, yes, work with government to make sure that we equip ourselves to take advantage. And then government can put the policy, then it's easy for the private sector to meet the local content policy because we have put the know-how and the skills in place. Thank you.
Madam Ondra, my inference is that we are all on the same page, but thank you very much for that clarification. We have 2 questions there at the back. Kindly tell us who you are, in what capacity you're asking the question. Keep it brief, to the point, and direct it to one panelist. Thank you so much.
Hi, Denvena. My name is Hilda Basona Monjebo. I'd like to ask the Minister of Finance a question. And I just want to know how relevant the budget is in the context of today's census results. I guess that budget we prepared or tabled 2 weeks ago, that was for 2.7 million people. I may be wrong. But today the reality is that we are 3 million people. How will he adjust the budget to align with the needs of the 3 million people now instead of the 2.7?
Thank you so much, Madam. A last question. All right. Whose discretion is it? The mic operator. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sean Larner, from Nedbank, and this question is addressed to the Honourable Minister Shiimi. As an economist by training, I presume you're not doing the 4-week test that we are doing now, working 6 days a week. I just want to know, when you lay awake at night, what do you think about, what are you concerned, and your future view for Namibia? We are very excited. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister, we do know that the Statistician General is in the House. From my understanding, and the chairperson could correct us if we're not on the correct trajectory, is that these are preliminary results and the final results await us in October. But be that as it may, I think Madam Basona Mojepo has a very valid question.
Thank you very much, Madam Nanjepo. The budget it's really, designed to address the basic needs of Namibians, irrespective of the level of the population. So when we're saying we are investing in human capital, is that, the human capital should be based on the population growth as well. So it's not, the numbers did not change today. I believe we have known that, the number of students are going to be so many this year. Yeah, so and therefore when you are budgeting, you budget in line with the numbers that are there. I think what we have had today is just a confirmation that the population is growing. So it will not change anything about the budget, and therefore it doesn't mean that we have now to go back and redesign the budget again. So it's, and again, the budget is something that will change. At midterm we will again review it. Next year we'll again review it, and these statistics that are being refreshed will be helpful in terms of coming up with a budget that is fit for purpose. So I don't think we should be too worried that the numbers have now changed quite dramatically, and therefore we need to go back to the drawing board. In terms of my colleague from Nedbank, I'm glad to hear the optimism, and I think only people who are optimistic but who are also working hard can really contribute transformation. So I share in your optimism. What keeps us awake at night, the fact that we need to transform the economy so that we can employ more people in the economy. And again, we can only do that when you change the structure of the economy. So and to change the structure of the economy, we must look at different sectors. Not only agriculture, there are opportunities there. Not only in the film industry that Menangula is talking about. There are also opportunities in the green economy, and I think Namibia is well positioned to exploit opportunities in the green industrialization. When we hear about the green hydrogen, in fact we have stopped talking about green hydrogen. We're talking about green industrialization. So it comes with assembling of things like solar panel, critical raw materials that is needed to produce batteries. It's a whole value chain that we as Namibians, I think we are well positioned to exploit this. So I think we also need to start to change our mindset to realize that the future is becoming green. And those who are going to support the green transformation will we will create opportunities and we will also exploit those opportunities in the green space. I think that's something that we need to be aware of.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I thought Mr. Chipuka and his team will say that the future is blue, but be that as it may, we've officially run out of time. Mr. Itope, just very briefly, we each have about 60 seconds for your brief concluding remarks on the way forward.
Thank you. In conclusion, first there was this excitement that was spoken about on benefits to the low earners, tax benefit to be specific. Now, when you put taxpayer, money, and 1st of March 2024 in one sentence, they will think about NAMRA. I want them to know this money is not coming from NAMRA, that there are no refunds that will be coming from NAMRA. So this is money that they will be saving on their remuneration.
They should not count on refunds.
No. Now, also, we were thanked for doing well, but this is really about the people who are here tonight. NAMRA is your institution. We are stronger when we collaborate. We are stronger when we build together. Let those who don't want to build with us judge us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The orange is on fire. Give him a massive round of applause, please. Mr. Hay, what is the way forward?
Yeah, no, thank you, Denver. I think we need to have one consistent message for the country. I think the minister is leading us well in that area in terms of pro-growth, sustainability, and inclusive. Now, on the policy side, we must not be in two minds. Investors essentially just want to know what is it that we are doing. And through that, investors are people, investors understand where we are coming from. So with that said, we hope that Dr. Shiimi will at some point maybe speak to us around the legacy project that our departed president spoke about when he said that no raw material will be exported. Thank you.
Let's please give him a massive round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Hay. Madam Wanja, what is the way forward from your perspective? What does the board have up its sleeve?
No, thank you very much. So I think somebody has said that this has been the most positive budget that we have had over many years.
It's a gentleman on your right.
Yes, yeah. So I agree 100% with him. So we thank the government and NAMRA and everybody involved for this. And of course, the economy is turning around. We have seen it in FDI numbers, we have seen it in GDP numbers, and now we are seeing it in revenue collection. The good news is, from where I stand, I think this growth is not here today, it's permanent and it is long term, and therefore we should expect more coming. And it is, we are right, I think we are the flavor of the month as Namibia. Let us get up as Namibians to make sure that the ship of Namibian economic growth does not leave us behind. Let us seize the opportunities. Thank you.
Said with conviction and from her chest. Give her a massive round of applause, please. Mr. Mungunda,
no,
the voice of reason.
No, thanks very much. I'm really excited to be. I told someone that this is probably the best time for you to be alive as a Namibian. We really look forward to a massive 10 years of huge opportunities, new sectors, growth. But I think as we do that, we also need to make sure of the things that we need to do to make sure that we link all of these opportunities into the local economy. So local content once more, the Investment Promotion Act. But I think there are also two other things that I would like to add as well. And is the fact that we have an issue with drought every second year. We have not solved, and we don't have a major, we must have a major Marshall Plan for water as a country. We don't have that. I didn't see that coming through. This is actually should be the biggest thing. We need to have a huge water infrastructure project, massive, bigger than anything else. That's one. The second one is when it comes to, and as we speak now, there are companies that have got water as a huge input into their production. that are worried as to what will happen in the next 12 months. But it's not the first time. It happened in 2019, it happened in 2013, it will come back again. So that creates a lot of uncertainty. The second one is we also have a huge challenge with electricity. It is the most expensive in the region. So from a business competitiveness is an issue as well. And I think that's also an issue that we also need to solve as a country as well.
Thank
so
you.
with that, very excited to.
Please give him a massive round of applause. Honourable Minister, you have the final word this evening. Quite a bit to consolidate, but we don't have that much time. I think Mr. Mungunda didn't repeat what he said earlier, but he says in his lifetime he wants to see more invested in agriculture than in defence, on the one hand. Secondly, I want to know, did you just officially endorse government's participation in the 4-day work week trial?
Denver, I believe that's a mandate of the Minister of Labour, and I wouldn't want to encroach in their mandate. So we haven't had that conversation yet. But really, the message I want to leave with all of us is that, first of all, I need to concede development is not easy. And it's difficult because it needs a lot of coordination. And coordination means partnership between the private sector and the business sector. I would like to emphasize that point. Partnership between government and private sector, that's something that we need to strengthen. That's the only way we can develop as a country. The second thing I want to emphasize is that entrepreneurship, that is what is going to help us to build businesses. So the assignment we should all have is that how are we going to nurture and support entrepreneurs? Starting with our children at home, starting with those that are in the banking sector, how do we support entrepreneurs? That way, we will have more businesses, we will have a thriving financial sector. Some of those businesses will be listed on the stock exchange, and I think that can make a difference. So that's an assignment that we should all embrace and move forward with it. So thank you very much.
Please give your Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises a massive round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise so generously and altruistically. And thank you for your continued service to the Namibian nation. You are excused. Thank you very much. Let's give them another round of applause. Let's give them another round of applause, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we're doing perfectly with time. We have exactly 5 minutes left for the vote of thanks, and then we can still sing the national anthem and the AU anthem together with our viewers on NTV. So really, really well done. I do know that there was immense pressure on time, and we were not able to cover as much ground as we wanted to. But Standard Bank, under Mr. Shipuka's leadership, has engaged law enforcement in the city of Windhoek to see to it that we will be allowed to network until about 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. So no one will need to go home. No one will also be arrested arbitrarily in the event that you are behaving within certain confines relating to a budget conversation and discourse. So please do not leave once the official program is done. We do want you to engage and network and ask all those pending and lingering questions. This phenomenal woman joined the Namibia Chamber of Commerce and Industry in 2004, initially heading the Trade Promotion Department. She has been responsible for the planning, organizing, as well as running of numerous NCCI projects and programs prior to and during her tenure as Chief Executive Officer. She also represented the NCCI at both local, regional and international engagements, assignments, conferences, including very challenging trade negotiation meetings. During her employment at the Chamber, she has also very diligently served as a member of the Namibia-Sweden Working Group, where they focused on trade cooperation, and as a member of the Namibia-South Korea Working Group on economic development strategies for Namibia. with the aim to ensure operational efficiency, accountability, as well as fiscal discipline, she has been tasked to strengthen the Chamber's administrative capacity at local branch levels. Ladies and gentlemen, would we please be so kind to put our hands together for the Chief Executive Officer of the NCCI, Madam Charity Muya, to come and thank us.
Thank you, Denver. You never spoke to me, so I don't know where you got all those credentials on my biography. But thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've all been enlightened this evening. It was very engaging, isn't it? Are we hungry? So, just last week, we commemorated the International Women's Day, where we hosted very beautiful, capable, and intelligent women in Namibia. And some of the issues that you are actually being raised in this engagement, particularly when it comes to the issues of local capacity, local content issues, were highlighted in those engagements. And I know Madam Hilda Basson was actually one of our panelists there who brought out very thought-provoking issues from those engagements. Now, Honorable Minister Tate Iipumbu, he kept emphasizing the focus of our budget, this year's budget, which really emphasizes the capacitating of or investment in our human capital, or human capital investment. And we've been challenged as a chamber, particularly to pay attention to all these new economies that are now in our grounds. And I'd like to inform you that maybe before I do that, that when you're looking at these new economies, it shouldn't only be about, service provision, but we have to look more broader. It has to be the whole value chain. And it should not only be in these sectors, but all the other economic or important critical economic sectors, which is agriculture, mining, the banking, the fisheries as well. We need to make sure that we open up opportunities for Namibians, irrespective of their gender, color, and creed. We need to be all-inclusive, and we have to do a lot to achieve that. And as a chamber, I'd like to announce or inform you that in the few coming weeks, we're going to be hosting a local content conference. But it will not only be looking at the new economies, but also the other critical economies that I've already mentioned. So we need to ready ourselves, not just to be engaging on these platforms, but to see what can we bring to the table as well. We upload all the efforts that are being done by many of our Namibian businesses in ensuring that you also invest your money to build the capacities of our local, particularly the young generation. And we hope that that is going to continue. And I believe that it will continue. We have also spoken a lot about the need to speed up policies or legislation that would ensure and actually bring in certainty to our investors. And not only the Investment Act, I think we should also prioritize the speeding up of economic empowerment policy. And please hear me out when I'm talking about local economic empowerment. It's not only for a certain group, for all Namibians, inclusive. Whether you're white, whether you're black, youth, women, and people with special needs, and everybody, we need to make sure that you are all on the same boat. When we crafted Vision 2030, it was more than 30 years ago, we said in it, Namibia is going to develop its own human resources, and it's going to be developed by its own human resources. So we need to work very hard in that space to ensure that we really bring the required skills that Namibia needs, particularly at this point in time. That said, I think Tate Shiimi, when you announced the budget, I have a young cousin there who was doing the calculations. And then she said to me, from now onwards, please call me 100,000 there, whatever that means. I'm not yet a millionaire, but at least called me 100,000 there, that they're able to save at least 100,000 untaxed. So thank you so much for that, Tate Shiimi and Namra. for all the efforts of really making sure that you have actually answered the call. And we would like to continue. I know that you're very consultative, Tate Iipumbu, as with all our other government leaders. We will continue to support your efforts from the private sector perspective. But I also want to call on the private sector that when you're doing these consultative engagements, please participate. They're free, but even if you're not able to participate, please within your, particularly for the corporates, avail your expertise so that they can actually bring more input to these consultations. Because at the end of the day, these policies are made for us, and we have to make sure that our voices are also heard in there. So that said, I would like to now give special thanks, first of all, to God Almighty, who really gave us the grace and the resources to be able to do all of this. There's a lot that goes behind the scenes when you're preparing an event of this nature. And people will come, they only see the good that is there. But there are people who work behind the scenes and they take all the blows and all the stresses, you know. So first of all, I also want to thank Standard Bank Namibia, my brother, Erin Shipuka. I think you've, not only is Standard Bank a Standard Bank, you've set the standard on how to actually host a glamorous event outdoor. So I think you deserve a big round of applause in that regard. Thank you for setting that standard, and we know that many of your clients are also here. I've heard many of them that have gotten the invitation. By the way, please, as Denver had said, let's mingle, because you'll be surprised to see what Namibia has. When the panel came up here, I was sitting next to Madam Mariel Berry from Papkevis, and the first thing she said to me that, look, wow, Namibia has very impressive, exceptional talents when they saw the panel here. So we cannot underestimate what Namibia is capable of doing. We do have the talent, and we continue to develop our talent. So I would like to thank also more sincerely Namibia Media Holdings, Abi Botha. I know Abi Botha is a man of so many talents. You find him everywhere. So we thank you so much, really, particularly for the role you played in terms of ensuring that all the logistics that were needed to be done and promoting this event was actually done. Thank you so much. To our panelists, the expert panelists, it was not only Namibians that was watching, the world was watching. So we can never doubt what Namibia is capable of having. We thank you so much really for all your inputs, very enlightening as well. But we believe that please, many of us, time was not on our side, would like to still engage. Please stay behind so that we can really engage more with you. And probably from there we can get more inputs on some of our advocacy activities that we need to take forward as a chamber. I also would like to thank, excuse me, I'd like to thank our president of the chamber, who also continues together with our directors who are here. I have seen, apart from Vetu, that Dr. Lieke Angala is also here. I don't know if I've missed anybody that I've not seen, but please, thank you so much. We appreciate you all for your guidance and all the things that we do. Our corporate members that are here, and some of you that have forgotten to actually renew your membership, please make sure that we do that. I see you. Thank you so much for your support. We still want to make sure that, please, there's a lot of work to be done. The chamber has been challenged now to make sure that with all these economies and all our advocacy efforts to bring the private sector together so that the private sector can speak with one voice. By the way, I need to assure you, Tate Iipumbu and everyone else, that in the chamber, it's peaceful here. We know that. Yes. Give me a round of applause. We welcome everyone. It's a chamber for all Namibians. As long as you're a business person, we are there for everyone. And in here, you can also bring your expertise. The various committees that we serve, my sister Nangula Wanja here already mentioned about the productivity committees. We need expertise in some of these engagements. And you as business people need to really make sure that apart from just, being in your own spheres, you can also bring your expertise to these engagements within the chamber and the private sector dialogue. So, Honorable Minister, I would like to assure you that as a chamber, we've already started the process of institutionalizing a public-private sector dialogue. We had engagements already last year that was actually brought together by the United Nations, where various private sector players also convened. And it was made clear by our Minister of Industrial Relations and Trade that the private sector need to spearhead this initiative. And we'll be contacting many of you to make sure that please you also bring your inputs on how we would like to see this structure to be done so that nobody is left out. Importantly, I would also like to thank the team that has been behind all the preparations of this Mengo. I'm sure you know her from Standard Bank. The colleagues from our media advertising team, NMH, Maggie Mbako. I know even when you were traveling, you were actually busy consulting and making sure that things are in place. My colleagues from the chamber, you've seen, I think, a few of them. My colleague, Antonia, and all other members of the EXCO committee from the Windhoek branch, Valme and Florentia, we appreciate you very much. Also want to thank members of the media who were here and the people that actually managed to ensure that the streamlining events, the streamlining had no technical issues. I think we are on the good path of ensuring that Namibia, when it comes to technological innovation, we are always on the right path. Of course, we need to engage more on that debate as well, because I do know very well that many of our people in the far remote regions, they still have issues with connectivity. You need to see how we can improve on that. Thank you so much. To our, these ones who have actually prepared a nice meal, please, everybody needs to be here and eat. So we've got delicious meal that is prepared for us there. But the man of the moment, Denver Kittings, we appreciate you so much for also managing the program very well and ensuring that you are always available in most cases when we actually do those engagements. I think you've done a very tremendous job. You also deserve a round of applause, I think, in that regard. And to all of you that have come this evening, thank you so much. Please, let's engage more and have a very blessed evening. Thank you.
It may not be customary to say thank you for the person responsible for the vote of thanks, but Madam Muya did such a sterling job of it that she also deserves a massive round of applause. The instructions are clear. We're not allowed to leave these premises until every single conversation has been had. I think you all have been phenomenal to have stayed throughout and to have been patient. I can imagine that there are conversations at home that will require some negotiation. If you need to take a selfie with the Honourable Minister to prove to whoever is at home waiting for these negotiations to be held later tonight, we can make arrangements for you. Indicate to me whether that need exists and we'll make the arrangements accordingly. We do know things can get very serious and sometimes people certainly are not fans of the truth, but you wouldn't have been here had you not been fans of the truth as people of integrity, right? As far as dinner is concerned, there are stations both on the right bottom and here on the left up here. So my proposal is that we divide ourselves in two groups around this tree, and those of us on this side of the tree make our way to that station, and those of us this side of the tree, starting with the high table, make our way to that station. Is that well understood? Again, we need to thank Standard Bank Namibia. We need to thank the Namibia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We certainly need to thank Namibia Media Holdings for signaling and signifying and launching a brand new dawn. Let us remember that this is our individual and a collective responsibility to continue pursuing sustainable economic growth for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, even if we don't get to meet them, but we need to think of them. Give yourselves and all of you a massive round of applause. With your indulgence, I'd like to invite you to please stand for the singing of the AU and the national anthems. Thank you.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberty. tree of life. Namibia, land of the brave freedom fight, we have won. Glory to their bravery, whose blood waters our freedom. We give our love and loyalty, together in unity, contrasting beautiful Namibia, Namibia, our country, beloved land of savannas, hold high the banner of liberty. Namibia, our country, Namibia.